Hey everyone! Earlier this year I expressed an interest in interviewing some of you for my channel, and this is going to be my first one. I'm going to call these interview segments Interstellar Modeler HFO, HFO standing for Hailing Frequencies Open, and I hope to give you guys the opportunity to meet some of your fellow modelers and learn a little bit about them. In this video we're going to meet modeler Josh Melville. He's someone that I met over Facebook a couple of years ago, and he's a talented modeler and builder and a big fan of the sci-fi genre. Now, if you've ever attended a model show, you might have had the same experience that I've had, where the sci-fi genre is kind of pushed to the side or given little recognition, and Josh is on a mission, so to speak, to change that. He's been an outspoken critic of this, and has actually gotten some of the Southern California model shows to expand their sci-fi category. So let's go ahead and meet modeler Josh Melville. Hey Josh!
Hey!
Thanks for being on and being my first guest here on Interstellar Modeler. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored. I'm really honored.
All right, great. Well, hey, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into model building?
Well, I'm an only child. That's how I got into model building.
Yeah.
So I started when I was pretty young. I'm going to guess somewhere around age, I don't know, 11 maybe, 10 maybe. And started with balsa wood models and other things that no one ever builds anymore. At least I don't. And I got into plastic models, and there weren't a lot of spaceships when I was over 12 years old. There was only the Starship Enterprise and maybe a couple of others. And I built several Enterprises, and all of them broke.
Right.
And fell off shelves. And so then I started building some tank models because that was kind of the closest thing I could come to that looked like spaceships. Then I started making some of my own spaceships from scratch. And then as this happened, life happens. I got married, had a couple of kids, and focused on that for about a decade or so. And then I got back into the craft about, I want to say, about 6 years ago.
So tell me, what is it that you enjoy most about model building these days?
It's a zen for me. Some people do knitting or jigsaw puzzles. I build models. It's you just sit there quietly in your own space, working on something creative, put on your favorite music, and just zen out for a few hours. And I think it's, of all my hobbies, it's definitely my favorite one because, after you waste, 30, 40 hours, you can at least sit back and go, wow, look what I created, It looks pretty good. Yeah. So, yeah. Cool.
And why sci-fi? You mentioned you built tanks and stuff before, but...
because I love sci-fi. So that's why sci-fi.
Big fan of the genre.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's take a look at some of your work. What I've done, I know you sent me some pictures of some of your builds, which are all fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm a huge fan of your work. And the two that I picked out are, which I find really interesting models. First, the Moon Hopper, and then we'll talk about the Orin Thor. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about the Moon Hopper, and particularly the cockpit. There's a lot of detailing there. A little figure that you painted there. So can you tell us a little about that particular area of the model?
Sure. Well, this is built straight out of the box. There's no upgrades or anything. It's a rare kit, and I tend to like to build rare kits. I tend to like to build things you can't just go and get in the hobby store. So I spend a fair amount of time on eBay hunting for rare stuff. And this was a kit, I think every sci-fi modeler bought this kit and started it and then threw it away. Because it's really complicated instructions. There's 4 different ways to put the model together, and I guess they thought that was kind of a cool thing. Kind of like before we had Transformers. This was like the first Transformer.
Oh, I see.
4 different models.
Yeah.
And they were all very different from each other, and they were all, of course, different scales. So when you get the model kit, you get different astronauts of different scales. Well, I tend to be a 1/48 scale builder. I like to build everything in 1/48 if I can. This is my 1/48 scale Falcon behind me, which is not easy to do. They don't have they don't have a kit in 1/48 scale. I had to convert this from a Hasbro toy.
Wow.
And so I chose the 1/48 scale. So you're looking at 1/48 scale cockpit. And the rest of it is pretty much straight out of the box. I didn't do any special modifications to it. However, I did not follow the paint guide. I went entirely with my own paint schematic.
And you did some, I can see, I'm going to say paneling or Aztecing, I guess, if you will, as I'm looking towards the back of the ship here and towards the rear exhaust ports and so forth. Looks like you incorporated some of that in the detailing. Yes,
that's a technique. I'm pretty sure I didn't invent it, but as you know, I discovered this technique the same way Christopher Columbus discovered America. You know, as far as I know, I discovered it. I don't know anyone else that does it, but I'm sure it's been done with other people. You basically take decals, you cut them into squares, and you put them over the base coat, and then you do a fine mist over that of the same color, of the same base coat, and it kind of pulls the decal into the model so that it doesn't look so toyish. And I've used that technique on a number of different models. It's quite effective, and it's fun and easy to do.
Wow, it looks fantastic. Were there any new techniques that you had tried with this particular model that you hadn't with any others?
Just that one. That was my second attempt at that technique.
Oh, wow. Well, I can tell you it's really a fantastic ship. I think it's actually won some awards, right?
It's one of all the models I've built. It's won the most awards. I think just because everyone has a nostalgic feel. I mean, it's a nice build, but I mean, you know, I don't know if it deserved first place 3 times in 3 different contests. Yeah. I think people have a nostalgic attraction. They go, "Oh God, I remember that ship when I was 12," and so I think I'm getting points for originality, which is fine with me. That's definitely part of the creative process. But I think I'm getting awards more for the originality than I am for the quality of the build itself.
Excellent, excellent. Now, the next model I want to touch on is the Orin Thor, and that's from Dune, is that right?
Right.
It's a very, very interesting model, and as you alluded to, you like to pick models that are different, and this definitely is. I've seen the movie just once. I hardly remember it, but I remember them having very unique-looking ships. So can you tell us a little bit about this kit and what you liked about it?
Sure. It's made by Revell. It came and went in 1984, so you're looking at a model that was minted in 1984. They're very rare. They're very hard to find. If you can find them, you'll pay anywhere from I've seen them as low as $100 up to $250 for the model itself. The plastic is a little on the brittle side, especially after all this time, so you have to take a lot of care when building it. I was lucky enough to find one on eBay for $60, and I grabbed it.
Wow!
And it's a fairly easy kit. The only mods I did to it were to the interior. The interior is kind of bare, so I did a lot of mods to the interior, and I lit it up. I don't know if you can see the interior clearly on any of the pictures, but I tried to angle it a little bit. Yeah. And the base is the base. I bought the base at a swap meet as a basic resin base. The figure, once again, it's a 1/48 scale. That is a 1/48 scale scuba diver that I adapted into the Dune figure because the scuba diving outfit is very similar to the desert outfits that they wore in Dune.
I see. Very interesting interior. And did you color the glass, or I should say the windshields yellow like that, or did they come that way?
They come that way. They're tinted green.
Wow, very and the metal finish, you did a great job with that as well. So
that was kind of my goal with this model. I really wanted to see if I could do what I would have to call futuristic copper. You know, some type of Dune takes place 10,000 years from now. So I imagine that whatever metal they're using to make these spaceships, it wouldn't distress and weather the same way some modern metal would. So if you look carefully, you can see there's an undercoating of copper, and then I used bits of gold leaf and enamel black to kind of create the effect you see, which is, I don't know what to call it other than just to call it, futuristic distressed copper.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. It turned out just amazing.
Thank you.
So let's actually move on. You know, one of the things that struck me when I first met you, and we went to a few model shows, I remember early on you were known for your determination to get sci-fi more recognition. Because granted, you go to some of these model shows and there are a lot of people who build armor and they seem to get all the limelight. So tell me a little about what drives you with that. What got you into?
Well, by trade, I'm an artist rights activist, and I come from a long line of activists and rebels and radicals. So when I see an injustice, it kind of gets me going a little bit. It's in my blood. And when I first got back into the hobby, I joined a couple of model clubs, and I just started noticing that not only were there very few sci-fi people in these clubs, even though they said everybody's welcome, but that the sci-fi people were treated rather disrespectfully. I remember showing off one of my Millennium Falcons at the show and tell, and someone saying to me, "Why is there dirt on the model? There's no dirt in space. There's no rust in space." And you know, I don't, you know, to me this just was like reminded me of like bullying from when you're in junior high school. So it was fairly clear to me that the shows which were directly connected to clubs were really all about armor. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, then you should probably just say we're an armor club, you know, and leave it at that. To invite people to join these clubs and participate in these shows and then bully them or ridicule them, it just didn't seem right. I've been fairly successful at getting two of the bigger shows in town to expand their sci-fi categories. And the argument that I was met with was, I said, look, you have two categories for space. You have space and then real space.
Yeah, right.
So now you have a Starship Enterprise competing with a Saturn V rocket, which makes no sense whatsoever. So I said, why not at least divide it up into maybe Star Trek and Star Wars and a couple other categories? And they tried it for a couple of times, and it worked. You know, the people started. The more categories they created, the more entries they got, until they went from having maybe 10 or 15 entries 4 years ago to having 150 entries 2 years ago. So clearly it was working. And I remember now the armor guys started to push back, like, why do we need all these categories for space? We're up to 8 categories for space. It's crazy. We just need 2 categories for space. And I responded by saying, well, I don't know. Why don't we have just, for tanks and planes and helicopters and submarines, why don't we just have just one category called war? You know? And of course they didn't like that, and they threw me out of their club. But that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your efforts. I went to that Pasadena show, not Pasadena, I'm sorry, it's the one in LA at the Auto Museum. Sure. And yeah, for sure, they had widened out that sci-fi category. So as a sci-fi builder, I want to thank you for your efforts, and you know, wish you hopefully you have continued success in giving us more recognition like that.
I'll keep trying.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up the interview here now, and I'm going to give you 5 questions. I want you to give me just a single word answer. It pops into your head.
Sure.
So let's start with favorite model of all time.
Probably have to be the Falcon here behind me.
Okay. And what is your favorite part of a build?
I think everyone's favorite part's the weathering and the painting, isn't it? Yeah, I have to say so. It's the most fun. It's the most creative part. But there are times when I really enjoy doing the building part. I don't have a favorite part. I like it all. But if I have to pick one, I'd say weathering. Okay. And do you have a favorite detailing technique? Anything that works is my favorite technique. You know, I use these powders that are not they're not pastels. They're the kind of, I don't know what to call them. They're powders you can buy at Burbank's House of Hobbies. They come in all kinds of colors, and they go on just like paint. And they're amazing for weathering.
And if you could see any ship come to life as a commercially available model, what would it be?
It would be the police transport craft from Minority Report.
Oh, yeah.
That's the snail-shaped. I think it's modeled after a snail that carried cops, that carried the Metro Police to wherever they were going to stop potential murder. And I just imagine if you did that in 1/48 scale, you know, it'd be about I don't know, almost 15 inches tall, and you'd be able to light it and put figures in it and do interiors. That'd be an amazing model.
Yeah, that would be cool. And lastly, is there anything sci-fi modeling that you haven't tried but you'd like to?
Well,
like building a certain scale, or?
Recently I've been commissioned to build a number of large studio scale models, and at first I was intimidated by the concept, but now I'm really starting to enjoy it. I see why it can become addictive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm into the studio scale thing now.
All right, well, that about does it. Thanks again, Josh, for being on. I really do appreciate it. You do some fantastic work, and I also appreciate you wearing the Interstellar Modeler hat there for me. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you around, and happy modeling.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. And yes, if you do get interviewed, there is an Interstellar Modeler hat in it for you. Well, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you then in the next one. Take care.